Former flat earthers. What made you come round? I talked to a flat earther about my job working for a company that tracks ship locations, routes, and speeds by satellite. We also had ways of monitoring carbon emissions based on fuel consumption and known weather conditions. None of this would work at all if the Earth was flat. Not a jot of it. I could only explain the most basic concepts, but it was enough for him to understand and realize that I was right and that he'd been convinced by someone who had no practical experience of the spherical nature of the Earth. I think that's what really did it. My experience was really tangible. This happens, then we measure the CTC, etc. No theory, just practice. A bit like showing a child a rock dropping to the ground in order to explain gravity, rather than giving them the whole theoretical shebang. You know, Kyrie Irving hasn't been doing press conferences. Man's just disappeared from the court like he fell off the disc. The Mobius strip earthers had more compelling arguments. No, there would be no need for argument since we're all on the same side. Quote I got from somewhere. For 5 years I believed the Earth was flat, then I turned 6. I convinced a flat earther, temporarily, by asking him if it was possible for a sphere to be so large that you could not tell it was a sphere by simply being on the surface of it. It took him a while. I used an analogy of an extremely long line that was so slightly curved you could not tell so by looking at a small section of it. Eventually he said yes to the sphere and I told him that was how big the Earth is. A few days later he reverted. Most of these people aren't mentally stable, they believe in a lot of conspiracies. What I like to do is use telescopes. This telescope is strong enough to see distant stars and galaxies, yes. Okay, look out this direction across the ocean. Can you see Europe? Look, it's really easy. If the Earth is flat, there would be an edge, S. And there would be a fucking Disney park at the edge, and we could bungee jump off the side and paraglide into the void etc. etc. Someone would be making an absolute shit ton of money off of it, if it existed. Guess what? Nobody is doing that. ADN in this world where absolutely everything is exploited for profit, if no one is making money off of it, it does not exist. No edge. Not flat. Get a clue? Let's not forget it'd be the cleanest and success guaranteed suicide. I mean, depending what's down there. Unless it's an endless void and all you do is keep falling until you starve. You know what, never mind. I watched a documentary about flat earthers called Truth Behind the Curve and my analysis from watching that these flat earthers are a group of people who found a community to be a part of. It's a shame their community is based on a lie, but I saw a bunch of people who were to be part of a community. Most of the people were social awkward and whatnot, and so an opportunity to be an influential figure within the community, so they double down on their flawed logic. The more against you are of them, the harder they rep their flatness. They actually did an experiment, and that if they got one result, the Earth was flat, if they got the other, it was round. Experiment showed that the Earth is, drumroll, round. They claimed it was human error that caused the wrong result. I was debating a flat earther in Mexico, and I asked him about how GPS worked if there were no satellites. He said that they had devices in the ground to route you. I told him the Mexican government is barely able to put decent water pipes in the ground. Would he really think they had the tech to put routing devices in the ground? He chuckled with a 1,000-mile gaze. I mean, with all the money go to routing devices in the ground, no wonder there is no money left. A serious answer here. The thing that made me stop was just the question, why would NASA lie to you? I will try replying to all of you, but we'll go to a study hall, so I'll reply later. This is a solid point. There's no way 70,000 scientists could keep it a secret. Edit. Since this is getting tons of replies and a lot are addressing the Manhattan Project, I'll address it here. Yes, they did a great job at keeping it a secret while it was happening, but it inevitably came out. My point is addressing that this secret would be impossible to continue to stay secret, especially during the current information age. I mean, fair enough, right? Like they don't have anything to gain or lose no matter if the Earth is flat, not saying it is, or Lamfeo. The inclined seat conformed perfectly to his body, strategically placed in the cockpit so he could reach no buttons with outstretched arms. The straps anchored him firmly in place. They were uncomfortable but necessary. The engine burst to life with a roar that burned out all the other audio. The vibrations tore through his body and he felt his body sink back into the seat as the G-force began to take hold. The captain was watching the readouts on the LED displays and monitoring their trajectory as the acceleration began to peel his thoughts away. There was no more room in his brain, it had been filled by pure fear. The boosters grew with greater ferocity as they lifted higher into the sky, the sun beaming down on the left side of the shuttle. But faster they went. Through Max Q and higher into the stratosphere until the engines grew quieter, the air more silent, and the vibrations became less violent. They were approaching space, the final frontier. An hour later, and with the path of the shuttle a success, he noticed as his raw emotions withdrew that his body felt funny, head hair drifted aimlessly across his eyes as the captain's pen hovered in midair, and he knew the impossible was true, his childhood dream, he was in space. Weightless. The captain turned around to him, and motioned him to unhook his seatbelts. He did as he was commanded. They both left their chairs and glided over to the tiny glass windows to overlook the magnificence of Earth. "What do you think now?" said the captain. He recoiled in horror. It couldn't be. NASA had replaced the windows with high-definition screens in order to perpetrate their lies that the world was spherical. Those bastards. On Behind the Curve on Netflix, two of the flat earthers accused the moon of being a giant TV screen controlled by NASA. You aren't too far off. This reminds me of Kurt Vonnegut writing, "Great job, eh? Had to travel to Japan, gave up on my beliefs in order to make a shorter trip." I said the same thing on another post. However, someone more familiar with the conspiracy said they believe the Earth is actually a circle with the North Pole in the middle with the South Pole, or Antarctica encircling us. For me, it just brought up more questions. I spent about a year infiltrating the Flat Earth community on Instagram. I garnered a decent following with an account dedicated to Flat Earth travel photos, an intentionally absurd premise. In that time I learned quite a bit about the community, including how to discern the trolls from the real deal. The majority of legit Flat Earthers are extremely distrustful of anything the government says or does. These same people are 9/11 truthers, Holocaust deniers, and anti-vaxxers, and they connect these conspiracies together. Many of them have also attached Flat Earth theory to religion, magic, or mysticism. Before my infiltration, I'd always considered conspiracies fun. Like they were the fan fiction of real life. Now they mostly make me sad. For all the phony accounts like mine, there are still plenty of people out there willing to drop a couple of $100 on a Flat Earth convention. Not a Flat Earther. But I was a 9/11 truther, I guess you could say, insofar as I thought it was an inside job. I was heavily influenced and believed in multiple conspiracies in the Zeitgeist film as well. There was a never-ending source of dark, shadowy thems controlling everything behind the scenes. I think there were a few factors that helped me escape that. Losing my father. It was such a life-changing event at that age that it made me reconsider everything in my life. Some light training in evaluating information. I learned about how to vet sources, primary, whether something was actually news or just an opinion editorial, etc. Ironically, this education came before I was duped. After my dad died, suddenly this started to kick in more. Lack of time means to dig myself a deeper hole. I started college shortly after my father passed, and that plus a full-time job took up all my time. I had none to buy further into the newest crazy bullshit. I had no Facebook, Twitter, IG, etc. No smartphone or texting. My primary use of Reddit once I discovered it was for our Naruto, our Bleach, Rage comics, and advice animals. So all in all, I think the time away gave me time to detox. If I had been on social media as I discovered those things, I can only imagine I very well may have become a Q believer as well. Looking back, I see how gullible I was in that moment, fooled by the onslaught of half-truths and clever logic of the various theories. I know better now, and I should have known better then, but I've been humbled to the fact that everyone is vulnerable to this sort of stuff. To think otherwise is deluding yourself. If someone starts as a round earther and then converts to being a flat earther and then goes back to being a round earther, would you say they've come full circle? I was tired of living life on the edge. Not me, but got a flat earther to question his beliefs, and hopefully critically analyze them, by giving him the proof he asked for, to which he responded mainstream science and media lies. I asked why he asked for proof if he could just disregarded his lies either way, then told him that since he required no proof, or evidence against, to believe something, it made him the easiest person to deceive, and that it seemed pretty sheep-like to me. He deleted all of his flat earth comments and hasn't posted about it since. No one took me seriously. Surprisingly enough. facts and logic. More specifically, star patterns. What we observe cannot happen on a flat Earth. So no one with serious responses. I was kinda looking forward to reading the replies. It was a typo. We discovered the Earth was fat. Not just heavy. Not merely big-boned but genuinely fat. I tried to convince others that the Earth is a circle but they wouldn't listen. It's pointless. Yeah, you really need to use the serious tag. People on here idiots lol. Did any of you former flat earthers just believe because you wanted to be unique and different from everyone else? I suspect that some people who deny shit like this are the same people who just wants to be different. They'll say they disliked a movie because the majority likes it. They'll say they don't enjoy a type of food cause most do. Basically, they don't really care how they truly feel about something. They just want to be different and say the opposite of the majority. Maybe not with everything. But they'll choose a few things in life because they want to feel special. My Phil is a flat earther and all-around nutcase. I asked him if the Earth was flat and he was right. What then? How is your life any different? His face was priceless because he didn't have an answer. It was great. It took about 5 years. It was all out of willful ignorance on my part. I just refused to question the logic of it. In fact, I spent most of my time coming up with crazy fantasies about a lot of things I didn't understand. But you have to understand that there's just so much we don't know about that sometimes our priority on what is real and what can be believed can get confused. I was learning so much so fast that I really didn't question something so inane as the world being flat. Of course it was, why wouldn't it be? The day that changed it forever though was when I asked my father what happens when you get to the edge of the world. He of course said the world is round like a ball. Being about 5 years old I thought that made a lot of sense. There are flat earthers all over the globe. Okay, I get the question is funny and all, but I actually did believe, for a time, that the Earth was flat. I was raised in a very religious family, and basically came to the conclusion that the Bible declared the Earth was flat, because since I believed the Earth was created in 7 days, the idea that God set the stars in the sky in 1 day made much more sense if the stars were simply points of light in a sort of snow globe formation extrapolated onto a bigger scale. Otherwise, he took 1 day out of the 7 to make a septillion or so balls of flaming gas, all with their own planets, and set each one into galaxies before breaking for lunch. It just didn't make sense to me that he would spend 5 days on one planet, and make the creation of the trillions of other stuff in the universe a little footnote. I was confronted about this belief a couple times, only one of which wasn't laughed off. That single person who engaged started a serious discussion, presenting much more evidence for the globe Earth, and eventually told me to watch Carl Sagan. The Cosmos series was on YouTube, and once I watched it, I had to know more. Finally, a video from the channel Minute Physics convinced me, in no uncertain terms, that the Earth was round. All it took was one quote, which I still remember leaving chills down my spine. You should have put a serious tag on this question.